G98.7 FM, The Way We Groove. It's Mark and Jem from 6 to 10. And we are online with a good friend, someone I know to have a loud mouth, someone I know also to have done a lot of work in the reggae scene in Toronto, in all seriousness, and someone who now is an author. We are speaking to Julion Anthony Christopher King. How are you this morning?
Fun that, no? That sounds good. Good morning, Jim. Good morning, Mark.
Good morning.
Full names and everything.
See there.
So you've written a book called Three Finger Jack, The Spirit of Jamaica.
See.
What led you to write the story? Tell me about this.
As a young man in Jamaica back in the day, I was about 9 years old, and heard about this gentleman who was like they called the scourge of the island. He scared the white settlers because he would not succumb to their ideology for slavery. And he walked across the island, did what he had to do, attacked the establishment in their homes. He robbed the stagecoaches. He went up into Blue Mountains to escape them and killed the militia that came up after him and walked the island free for several years. So I wondered why he was in my history book, why he wasn't a hero. I was tired of people like, Christopher Columbus and what's his face?
Captain Morgan?
That's one of my favorite. Mm-hmm. The pirate. Mm-hmm. That pirate, he's a pirate. He's a rapist. He does things. And then years later, he's still doing the raping thing because we're still buying his rum. And I don't know how much of that money is still going to Jamaica. So Captain Morgan is still doing his thing.
He's still raping the country in some way or another, right?
You see me?
Right.
And this gentleman, Jack, was, I wondered why us school children weren't given more information about him.
So who is Three Finger Jack? Like, how did he get his nickname?
Well, initially, it is thought that, back in the day when a slave escaped the plantation and was caught, they would remove an appendage or two.
Okay.
So he escaped once and lost two fingers on the left hand, hence the name Three Finger Jack. And he escaped again, obviously. And word is he was caught by the Maroons, or nobody's quite sure how he was killed. Mm-hmm. But the second time you escaped, they were supposed to cut the hand off, and the third time they were supposed to hang you. So, the degradation of slavery, some people believe it still continues to this very day.
And what did he represent to the establishment, and then conversely to Jamaican people?
Well, the interesting thing is that you can ask lots of Jamaican people, and you say, who's Three Finger Jack? And everybody kind of knows of him, but they can't quite put their finger on what he is and who he is. And because as a race or people, we tend to not write our own histories, we have been given so-called West Indian history by the British. They wrote down things that Horatio Nelson did and Francis Drake did, but didn't quite tell us about Jack. So many Jamaicans, we hear about him. He became part of folklore, more so than a historical piece. He became folklore, but he was so famous back in like the 1780s or whenever his time was, that they wrote plays about him in England, in the court. So he was a significant individual, but he wasn't given star status or hero status because he fought the establishment. Mm. So my thing with this is for a scholar, somebody who is a little bit smarter than me, to go out and find out about Three Finger Jack. And if he's a hero, bring him to the people. Let them understand this spirit of rebellion has been inside of us ever since.
Now, some might claim rebellion to not be as proud a attribute of some people. Like, for example, in your foreword of the book, you say that you're glorifying one of the most significant Jamaicans that have ever lived. But what do you say to those people that might say that, you're glorifying a known criminal or a fugitive or a killer?
Well, the wonderful thing about history is that it all depends on who writes it. Mm-hmm. So if you ask the white settler who raped an entire nation of Africans and brought them against their will into the quote-unquote new world, they will tell you that Jack is probably a killer. But if you ask the Jamaicans or the slaves who lived within that time, had they written their own history, then maybe Jack would be kind of like how they write about Robin Hood.
Okay.
And Kevin Costner and Russell Crowe and Sean Connery and a bunch, Errol Flynn, they've all played that guy as a hero. But if you read between the lines, Robin Hood was exactly what he is, a robber.
Mm-hmm.
So when they write their history, these guys are famous. But then when they write our histories, Jack is a thief and a murderer. And I'm not saying that maybe he wasn't those things. I'm just saying I don't have enough information. But when I wrote about him, when I thought about him as a child, I thought of him more as a liberator of the people and of slavery.
And while he's been blamed for murders at the time, the popular legend had it that he did not harm women, children, or slaves. And a lot of writing suggested he actually freed a number of slaves during his reign.
He also took money from the soldiers and gave it to slaves. So that whole Robin Hood thing is more appropriate to who he is. But like I said, it all depends on who is writing your history.
Well, you wrote this one, so where can people get the book and get in contact with you?
All righty then, Miss Gemini.
You like
Thank
that?
you for that wonderful question.
Segue.
See there? So you can hit me up on CanadianReggaeWorld.com. As you mentioned before, I've been doing this reggae thing for a long time. So I posted it in the contact area with a little excerpt. And the bookstore currently, and it's called The River Trading Company, which is 1418 Queen Street West. And I'm still working on a different book list, which, as you know, is at 746 Bathurst. And I'm just kind of working out the consignment deal with those folks. And for those people who know me, which I've done all last week, I actually started selling it online all by myself. People send me e-transfers or email transfers, and I will mail you your book. I have envelopes and stamps, and I'm doing the mailings myself. So, and more than anything else, I'd love a generation of people to read about people who came before us and what their contributions were. And then maybe, there are enough information in the archives in Jamaica to find out when Jack was bought, when he was sold, when he was captured. Mm-hmm. And there's tons of information about him. So I'm encouraging anybody, any scholar, to go out and tell the world about this man. If he's a murderer and all these things, well, we'll find out. If he's not, then maybe Jamaicans start to look at, we've been a fight for a long time.
Julion King, thank you very much.
Love or no.